Right now, the time on your phone is exactly correct, synced automatically, agreed upon by your entire country without you ever thinking about it. That agreement is newer than you'd expect. For most of human history, there was no such thing as a wrong time, because there was no such thing as an agreed-upon time to be wrong about. Every town set its own clock, and every single one of them was technically correct. Here's the strange part. Local time was never really about convenience. It was about the sun. For thousands of years, humans set their clocks using a simple, logical method. When the sun hit its highest point in the sky, that was noon, wherever you happen to be standing. That method is called solar noon, and it's completely accurate for the place you're in. The problem is, solar noon happens at a slightly different moment in every single location east or west of you. Travel just a few miles, and technically, the correct time has already shifted. For most of history, that didn't matter, because nobody traveled fast enough for the difference to matter. If you walked or rode a horse from one town to the next, the tiny time difference between them was smaller than the time it took you to get there. Nobody noticed. Nobody needed to notice. Then, in the early 1800s, railroads changed math entirely. Suddenly, humans could travel dozens, then hundreds of miles in a single day, fast enough that the accumulated time differences between towns became a real, practical problem. And it wasn't a small problem. In the United States alone, by the mid-1800s, there were reportedly over 300 different local times in use across the railroad network. Every town ran its clocks based on its own solar noon, which meant every railroad company had to publish a separate timetable for every city along its route, each with a slightly different local time listed. Think about what that actually meant for someone trying to catch a train. A schedule might say the train departs at 2:15, but 2:15 according to which town's sun? Missed connections, confused passengers, and in the worst cases, actual train collisions happened because two trains operating on two different local times thought they had the same track scheduled at different moments. Railroads weren't just inconvenienced by this. They were being put in danger by it. Railroad companies tried to solve this internally first, creating their own standardized times just for their own train lines. But different railroad companies used different standards. So a station served by two different railroads might display two different official times on two different clocks in the same building. The person usually credited with pushing the real solution was a Canadian railway engineer named Sandford Fleming. In 1876, Fleming missed a train in Ireland because a printed schedule listed PM instead of AM, a tiny error that cost him an entire day. Frustrated, he proposed something radical: divide the entire planet into a grid of standardized time zones based on longitude, so that instead of thousands of local times, the whole world would run on a manageable, predictable system. His idea gained serious traction. In 1883, without waiting for any government mandate, American and Canadian railroad companies agreed among themselves to adopt just 4 standardized time zones across North America, essentially creating order voluntarily because the alternative was too costly to keep running. The idea went global a year later. In 1884, delegates from 25 countries met in Washington, D.C. for the International Meridian Conference. They agreed to divide the entire Earth into 24 time zones, each one roughly matching 1 hour of the planet's rotation, all measured relative to a single reference point in Greenwich, England. That reference point became known as Greenwich Mean Time, and for the first time in human history, the entire planet had a shared mathematical framework for what time it actually was, no matter where you stood. That didn't mean everyone adopted it immediately. Plenty of towns and even entire countries resisted switching for decades, reluctant to give up their locally defined solar noon. Some regions held on to their own local time systems well into the 20th century, purely out of tradition or political resistance to a system created by foreign railroad interests. So here's the full picture. For most of human history, time was hyperlocal, tied directly to wherever the sun happened to be above your head. It took faster travel to expose the flaw in that system, and it took repeated real-world chaos, missed trains, and actual collisions before humans agreed to give up something as personal as their own local sun and replace it with a shared, invisible grid stretched across the entire planet. The next time you glance at your phone and trust the time without thinking twice, remember that agreement is barely 140 years old, and it only happened because enough trains crashed into each other first.